Welcome to Data Center Dialogues, the podcast that empowers your data center knowledge. I'm Francesca Van Thielen. Welcome. In today's episode, we're diving into the very heart of digital transformation, the physical infrastructure that keeps our digital world running. Data centers used to be seen as just a way to keep the lights on, but things have changed. They've become strategic hubs that shape how organizations think about security, sustainability, and innovation on a whole new level. We'll take a closer look at why data centers are so much more than just server rooms. They're the backbone of our digital economy, and understanding their role is key for any business that wants to stay ahead. To help us unpack what the shift really means for IT leaders and business decision makers, we're joined by two leading experts who know this world inside and out. Joost Rommelaere is an experienced IT executive with a background in digital transformation, cybersecurity, and infrastructure strategy. He currently serves as CIO at WDP and has previous experiences with PSA Antwerp and the Senderlo Group. Joining us as well is Baudouin Corlùy. He is Chief Market Development Officer at LCL Data Centers, where he helps organizations make strategic and sustainable choices about how and where they manage their data. A very warm welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Joost, I'd like to start with you. For those who are not very familiar with the activities of WDP, can you explain us briefly what activities are of WDP?
WDP, or Warehouse the Power, is a logistics real estate company. We buy and we build warehouses and we lease them to our customers. We have 450 or more across Europe in various countries, Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, Romania, and in two markets now, France and Germany, further developing. Mm-hmm. We are about 150 employees with a Bell 20 company with a book value of more than 8 billion euro.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thank you. Baudouin, the same question for you, LCL Data Centers. Tell us a bit more what you do and where are you located?
Well, as you said, LCL is indeed a data center company. So we are providing data center services, building ourselves as well data centers. We have 5 locations, only in Belgium. So we are a pure Belgian owned company providing these services and doing this, first of all, in a sovereign way, but also in a very sustainable way.
So when we talk about digital transformation, we very often mention innovation and the cloud and, of course, artificial intelligence. We rarely mention the physical foundation that makes it all possible. So I'd like to begin there. Joost, from a CIO perspective, how do you determine the role of the data center within the digital strategy of WDP?
It's important and not important, sorry to say so. But for me and for as a CIO for WDP and also my previous experiences, a data center has to be there. And it's also depending on your type of activity. For example, in the past I was working for PSA where data centers were crucial. They had to be on premise to tackle the lead times in the automation. And there they were very important. For WDP, it's important in such a sense that data must be there, it must be reliable, must be secure. So in that sense, it's important. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Baudouin, because you advise organizations regarding their data center strategy, so which aspects are really important?
Well, besides the fact that it needs to be secure, I would say also scalable. So the flexibility is very important and the presence of connectivity typically also is part of the scalability. But next to that also, and this is more recent, I would say, sovereign and also sustainable. Sovereign because, of course, the geopolitical situation and evolutions, evolves and allows also people to reconsider the way how they handle their data. And next to that, you have the sustainability aspect, mm-hmm. because, and we'll certainly also speak about it in a couple of minutes, mm-hmm. AI is influencing this. Having harder workloads, of course, which is, of course, very energy consuming. So you better do this in a very sustainable way.
Yeah, indeed. Several aspects that we will talk about in depth a little bit later. But I'd like to invite you to take us through the decision-making process. So When do you have to make decisions about data centers? So when exactly is that?
I think it's various occasions. I've made a decision in the past on when we started to invest in new hardware, or and for example, it could be for an SAP implementation. We need to have a strong infrastructure, data centers in place. Then you decide, okay, we need new data centers. Will we insource them or outsource them? For example, for the center leukemia, we decided on a certain moment in time that we said, okay, we had data centers which were not adequate. They were not safe. It was one of the on a Seveso site in the Senderlo that, okay, in terms of risk, this is too high. So we decided.
And when you say it was not safe, what exactly do you mean by that?
Safe. In fact, we had two data centers. One was located in an environment which was close to a parking lot, and from a security point of view, that's the other one was on the Seveso side. So it's a risk if something happens. Let's say an incident on the chemical site, then you have an issue. You cannot access the data center and so on. So we decided we're gonna move these data centers away from these two locations, and we looked for a co-location space, not with LCL at that time. It's one of your competitors, and we had to do major investment in new SAP servers. So at that time, we said we do the new investment and we go to new data centers, and from then on we moved gradually all the other applications from the old data centers to the new, which takes quite a while, of course.
Yeah. So safety, security of where you store the data is really crucial.
And then the other aspect in this project was that, okay, speed. If you need to build a new data center, it takes a while. You need to permit and so on. You need energy, you need engineering, you need how much power do you need, how much cooling do you need. Expertise we did not have, so we said, okay, we're going to outsource. A second element, you need capital investment, because it can cost easily a few million euros or more. Yeah, it was just rent the space, put the servers in, and your data center provider takes care of everything.
So Baudouin, what's your take on this decision to really outsource and to be unburdened, because that's what you do as a company? Is that a good strategy?
Well, I would even add an additional element, which was probably also an element to be considered. This is the fact that it needs to be compliant more and more. Compliancy takes an important role. We can speak about, of course, the quality and different ISOs you need, starting with ISO 27001. But when considering now the evolution of compliance, you have now NIS2, cybersecurity engagement, and the way how you handle this, which are additional elements that can be provided by external data centers.
And that's definitely, at that time, we didn't have NIS2.
I understand.
So cybersecurity was still far away on the horizon, but definitely it's an element that plays today enormously, for sure.
Yeah. What about the cost? Was that taken into account as well? The cost of being unburdened.
Yeah, unburdened. Yeah, it has a price, but if you look at it, we paid a certain amount per year. I don't know anymore how much it was, but if you look at the investment we had to take and the loans we had to take, then it was a no-brainer. Just outsource the whole thing, and even on 10 years, the cost was peanuts compared to the whole investment we had to do. So that was. For us, it was very crucial. Speed was important, and capacity and lack of skills to develop and manage that.
In a data center, you have, of course, also economies of scale. Of course, when you provide security, for instance, guards that needs to be present on your data center, if you do this only for your own company, there is a cost which is quite important. If you can scale this because you have other customers, you can spread, of course, the cost. And this is the case of security, but this is the case as well for all technical equipments. Generators, UPSs, batteries, all these have an important cost. If you make it redundant, you have a double of the cost, of course. So economies of scale are very important and allows, of course, for the company to be more efficient. CapEx-wise.
Well, yes.
I want to add something on that. Okay, that's a case where we decided to outsource the data centers. Another case where I was working for PSA, we had own data centers. It also, container terminal business, it had to be very close to the operations. When it's down, the connectivity is down, your container terminal is down. So it's something you cannot, you have to avoid for sure. And on top of that, we started to automate things. So you need to have data centers very close to physically close to the terminal. On the site itself, the backup data center could be a bit further away, just to avoid the latency. Firstly, so secondly, to shield it from the OT for the run the automation, to shield it from the IT. So that's in terms of cyber risks, this is minimized. So that was a reason where we decided, okay, we have to have them on premise and even on the container terminal.
Regarding the cloud solutions, you talked a bit about the on-premises, but the cloud, the private cloud. What's your take on the different cloud solutions?
I think if I look at companies I've been working for, one company really had a cloud-first strategy, which is very convenient. As a CIO, you don't bother. You're really unburdened, as we discussed before, and you have a worry-free time in terms of data center. You don't have to look at, you have flexibility in terms of capacity. You don't have to take care of patching. So it's cybersecurity-wise, it can be top-notch. So for me, this is a preferred solution. You have all the discussions now with sovereignty and so on. But and if you look today for commodity applications like email, there's no discussion. A lot of applications are really cloud first also. So we have an application to manage the facilities. It's SaaS only. We have other applications, they're only SaaS only. So a lot of applications are SaaS only, and you can put them on premise maybe, but we don't go that route.
So I hear it's cost efficient. You also mentioned there's the economies of scale, like security of the data centers. In some of the are there any situations where it's comprehensible that people still choose for an on-premise solution?
Like Joost said, indeed, latency. If the data needs really to be located next to your facilities, latency is crucial. In that sense, I would say on-prem can still be a very valid solution. But in all other cases, on-prem solutions, and this is typically an evolution you see over the past years, on-prem solutions are left. Today, when you consider the overall market, you can say that more or less 1/3 of the data workloads are in the public cloud, typically at hyperscalers like Azure of Microsoft or AWS of Amazon. 1/3 is in data centers located, and 1/3 is still on-prem. But with an evolution from on-prem to data centers or public cloud, and you have nowadays also the other way where companies are considering going from the public cloud again to either data centers or on-prem. Because indeed, we spoke about costs. Let's not forget, public cloud solutions are not for free neither.
So, and there I have heard cases, I never worked for these type of companies, but their costs exploded because they went to a public cloud and so on, and their IT cost or their data center cost was tenfold compared to the on-premise. So you really have to manage this very, very carefully. And once you're in, it's a lock-in, and you see the cost increasing.
It is very important to understand that once you have chosen for a public cloud solution, it is very difficult to come back. So you need to review your IT architecture and also the applications you have put in the public cloud. So it's not that easy. So you better further think about how you handle this kind of workloads.
Joost, I'd like to come back on the experience that you have also with BSA Antwerp and the Sandler Group regarding the relocation of the data center. Could you tell us a bit more about the time that it takes between taking that decision and the actual execution of it?
And I think before you decide to do a classical RFP process, blah, 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 it takes 6 months. And then it's a matter of, once you've decided, your part has the square meters available, you start paying maybe a minimum fee. And I think the basic infrastructure was there when the service was there in 6 months. We had to replace the SAP servers in 6 to 9 months, everything was up and running. All the rest it takes more because it's depending on the application. Some applications are really difficult to move. Might be a lot of business risks. Might have impact on business continuity. So that can easily take another 1 or 2 years after that. That's my experience. Could even be longer.
Well, we've been discussing the technical side of where to choose that the data center is being located, but there are other elements that you have to take into account. I think that decision is also influenced by sustainability. You already mentioned it, Baudouin, energy, regulation, geopolitics. So let's discuss these elements as well. And I'd like to start with, sustainability, which is a big issue for data centers. We know that the demand for the capacity that it will keep growing. So how can organizations reconcile performance with sustainability and energy efficiency? Joost?
For me, it's clear you have to go to an outsourced data center. If you do it an on-premise data center, it consumes energy and electricity for powering the servers, for the cooling, so there is no discussion. You go to a data center or to the cloud, it will be more energy efficient. And also data center providers have also solutions where they recuperate energy or heat. Maybe you do that, I do not know. So that's even better because you as a small company cannot put this type of infrastructure in place. And so that's clearly for me the easiest way to save energy. Also, whereas the PO, for example, has to comply or report on ESG. ESG reporting, if you take our annual report, is a very big part of the report itself. So energy is very important. Of course, our biggest focus now is on our solar panels and on direct suppliers, where we can, let's say, save energy. But sooner or later, we'll have to look at our data centers and the consumption of our digital infrastructure. We're not there yet, but it will come definitely.
Yeah. So the question to you, Baudouin, so what is LCL Data Centers undertaking to reduce the energy use?
Well, first of all, it is important to note that when I had some discussions with CIOs a couple of years ago, or 2-3 years ago, they didn't really consider sustainability as being an important part of their role. This has changed totally. Today, when you speak about sustainability with a CIO, he says, well, yes, indeed, we are really busy with that kind of concern, and we need really to act. So that's important to note. So indeed, from a data center perspective, we are doing a lot. By the way, we have also our own ESG report already for more than 3 years now, reporting all actions that are taken. On the one hand, regarding energy efficiency, we are installing ourselves, typically new cooling systems to improve the cooling, because cooling is an important part, of course, of the efficiency of a data center. And next to that, another one that is very important is the production of energy. So we are producing ourselves as well energy through our own wind turbines and solar parks. So it goes from, on the one hand, power efficiency, that needs to be done. On the other hand, of course, handling the power in the most appropriate way.
Something that's really important in the decision where to host crucial information regarding your company is, of course, safety. Cyber resilience has to be cyber resilient. Cybersecurity is really important. Europe has installed those new regulations like NIS2 and DORA. So how are they changing the expectations toward, for example, your business in the real estate, Joost?
Real estate and such is not part of NIS2, but our energy production is part of NIS2. So we look mainly at our supply chain, our suppliers, because we have some solar panels and people who manage these assets, and they have to. We talk to them so that they become more NIS2 compliant at a certain level. So from that point of view, has it an impact on our data centers? No, not for the time being. Our back office and so on is in fact not in scope of NIS2. So we of course we manage them very secure. But it's not something. That is not driving to become more cyber secure. But on data centers itself, it's really important for us that they are managed in a secure way. So we have an external party or managing our data centers who patch them timely. Our network is monitored by external parties so that we really monitor all strange activities. So this is definitely in place and okay, luckily. So that's but this was not driven by NIS2. It's something you, as part of good cyber hygiene in any way.
Yeah, and NIS2, well, NIS2 is in a certain way, I would say, the next step after ISO 27001. Data centers are part of the NIS2 essential infrastructure. So yes, we are NIS2 compliant. We need to comply with it, of course, from a cybersecurity part, and also it goes towards the subcontractors you have as well. So it's not limited to your own activities. You need to be sure, of course, that your subcontractors also comply with these elements, NIS2 DORA. So it's an important part of our work, and as a data center, you need to comply with it. That's for sure.
Something else that we definitely should talk about is well, you already mentioned sovereignty of the data, but also geopolitics. Times are really changing. We can't really count anymore on our friends, the United States. We're counting on others for energy supply. There are cyber threats. So how can you make sure that the decisions that you make today, that they're future-proof in a time that everything is changing so quickly? That's a difficult question, isn't it?
I think we have definitely a legacy of technical depth in terms of history. What we all use Office 365. It's American. We use Azure and so on. When we have a good European alternative, which has the same functionality, I think definitely in Europe there's definitely a business opportunity, but we're not there. We're not there yet, in my belief.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know that market so well, but definitely I think as a company, you should consider any company in Europe to move to a more, let's say, independent environment, irrespective.
But even if they move their data to, well, it's still a hyperscaler, but they're active here in Europe. The data is not completely safe.
No. You should move to a European hyperscaler like OVH of the French, but they're not developed as the current hyperscaler. So I think this market still has to be developed in Europe, and we better start investing more and more in that, so companies can move to that type of activity.
Yeah. So what's your take on this very insecure future that we're looking at?
Well, I would say you need to be prepared, of course, to what could happen. It's all about to be risk averse and to comply with the risks you're taking. Sovereignty is indeed today an important element. You need, first of all, to locate your data, of course, but also what is behind this infrastructure. I mean by that, and you said it yourself, hyperscalers can be located in Europe, but there is still something like the Cloud Act, and Cloud Act is indeed imposing to American companies.
Yeah. Can you briefly explain what this US Cloud Act is?
Well, the US Cloud Act imposes to American companies to provide the data they have in their hands, although this data could be located elsewhere in the world, not only in the US. This imposes to typically the companies in Europe to reconsider the way how they handle their data.
Another aspect that brings a lot of change in the world, that's of course artificial intelligence. So let's explore how AI is transforming the infrastructure discussion. So Joost, what about the WDP?
I think it does not influence the infrastructure discussion at all. Yeah. To be honest, okay, we're a rather small company. We use public available tools like ChatGPT and the likes of LLMs. And we have some AI projects. And what we do, of course, we make use of a solution like Azure or AWS, where we can make use of the existing infrastructure, which we can scale very quickly. So in that sense, it influences. We jump on the existing infrastructure. And we need this because we need to scale quickly, increase the capacity on demand effect. So in that sense, it influences, but not more, not less.
Yeah. So Baudouin, is AI influencing the way that, data centers evolve these days?
Well, there are two aspects. From a customer's perspective, I would say yes, certainly, because their hybrid cloud is typically an appropriate, or could be an appropriate solution. It's complementary, I would say. You can have some applications in the public cloud, typically using Azure or AWS or Google Cloud for typically handling data in the most appropriate way, using AI, the AI tools that are provided, while still keeping your data, of course, in your own hands, on-prem or in the data center. That's from a customer perspective. From a data center perspective, it has also a huge impact. As said in the beginning, AI is consuming a lot of energy. So we need to reconsider the technologies that are used in a data center. Today, most of the data centers are cooled via air cooling. Well, this will evolve depending, of course, on I would say the workloads in the racks towards liquid cooling. And liquid cooling is typically a totally new technology that needs to be implemented then in data centers, which is then reconsidering also the energy efficiency. So it's more than only having, I would say, some technology insights or using a technology for some workloads. It's also how you can handle this in the most appropriate way, in the most efficient way. And that's all about, the current challenge in the data center.
Yeah. I'd like to come back quickly to the fact that we can't really count on those US hyperscalers and the safety of our data that we need to store here in Europe. Do we have the capabilities for Europe to install enough capacity for doing so, for being future-proof?
It depends how it is considered. When you look at typically the evolution of AI, the training models are located in the Nordics. And this is more about, I would say, energy efficiency also, and the price of electricity in the Nordics, where they can provide the capacity, where they are building typically data centers for huge AI workloads. I can speak about AI factories typically in Finland, for instance, that are located indeed to provide the necessary capacity. If you speak about just handling data, the data centers of today are, I would say, still evolving, or ourselves still building additional data centers at a pace that is, at least today, enough to cope with the demand. How it will evolve tomorrow is still a question mark, of course.
Well, that was going to be my question, my last question. Well, if you have to, make an idea of what will happen in the next 5 years, how the data storage will evolve, it's too difficult to look into the future, you think?
Well, once again, it depends on different factors, and you brought it already up, being the geopolitical situation. What will be the impact of the geopolitical situation? This could, of course, influence enormously as well the way how people will handle their data. Nevertheless, if you look at the investments that have been announced over the couple of weeks ago, you still have a lot of investments that are made by hyperscalers as well as by data centers. So it's a very difficult question, and like you said in the beginning, it's also very CapEx intensive. So let's not just jump with 2 feet, thinking that everything will happen as we could think in the most ideal world. It's a business in which you need to be careful while still investing enough. Is there today enough capacity? Yes, there is. Will there be enough tomorrow? It will depend on the evolutions of what we see today in the world.
Well, a final question for both of you. It's a question that we ask to every guest that we have in this podcast. Is there one belief or one assumption about data centers that you think that we should question more often? Joost?
Yeah, when you talk about data centers, people associate it with digital transformation, and there is no such digital transformation without business transformation. For me, it's clear it's business driven. So business has to drive things forward, and they should be in the lead of let's say, driving digital transformation. Having said that, of course, the technology or the IT and digital teams play an important role in advising and setting the right direction, because the business does not understand the technology, and they should not. So we have to advise them and say, okay, this is the best solution for XYZ. So for example, go for a full cloud, go for a data center, whatever. So, but digital transformation is to be driven by the business. For me, this is the main lesson I've learned through the years, and I've seen projects being very successful driven by the business. And I've seen projects going very difficult, which were not so well business driven. So that's my main lesson.
Well, thank you. That's a very nice insight. What about you, Baudouin?
My last words?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would say data centers is today not just about technology. It is nowadays also a battleground for typically political power, for sovereignty, and even more for the way how you control the digital economy. That's the data center world of today.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank you, Joost and Baudouin, for this very interesting and insightful discussion on the strategic role of data centers in the digital and business transformation. That's what I've learned as well today. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening or watching this podcast. If this conversation inspired you, I invite you to subscribe and explore more episodes at datacenteruniversity.be, where we empower shared knowledge and spark new ideas for the digital leaders of tomorrow. Until next time, for more insights that drive digital leadership.